Let's talk about custom actions within Voice AI. Trust me, you're going to want to watch this. This is one of the coolest features of Voice AI within HighLevel, and it gives you the ability to build extremely powerful AI agents using the platform. As always, my name is Andrew, and let's dive right in. Now, custom actions are awesome, and in order to navigate here, we can go to AI agents and then go into any one of our Voice AI agents. Now, we can find our custom actions under agent goals, and then if we scroll down, we'll be able to find new action. And then once we select this, we can click custom action. Now, we can do a lot of really cool things with this action. So let me walk you through each one of the cool use cases that we can do. Now, the way these actions work is first you have to give them a name. Then what we're going to do is we're going to give the AI a scenario for when this custom action should take place. For example, if the user wants to talk to a manager or business owner, whatever we want our scenario to be, we can put it in here. Then we want to include what the AI is going to say before executing this action. So once it sees that the user wants this action to take place, then it'll say, I'll process that request, or let me get that for you, or whatever you want it to say right here. Both of these have a character limit of 500 characters. Then we have our API details. Now, if you haven't used APIs before, this might be a little bit confusing, but let me explain how this works. With our API here, we can do two things. We can either post to a URL or get from a URL. This is really just allowing us to either push out a set of information to a URL or get a set of information from a URL. That's the difference between post and get. Now, we can test some of this using live APIs that are on the internet. Feel free to search for an API that you can use. You can also build your own within a database, or you can use a platform like Postman in order to do some testing in order to build your own version of this API request. So think of the API as wherever we're pushing the information or getting our information from. Our headers are what information we're getting. So if we say phone number, then we can give a value here for what we're going to post. And just like that, make sure you don't have any spaces or anything. You just have either hyphens or no spaces within your title, and then a value, and you can add as many headers as you're going to need for this API request. With GET API requests, it's a little bit different, but it still works essentially the same way. Then we can also toggle on authentication. So if you're using a platform that requires you to have an API key or a token, then this is where we're going to use that, and we can paste our API here. Then at the bottom, we can set our parameters and variables. So this is going to be what we are collecting from the conversation. So we can give a name, let's say for this example, price, and then from the conversation, we'll call it price of house. So the way these work is we can designate a type here, being between strings, integers, floats, booleans, phone numbers, or emails. These are just different types of variables that it can find within custom code, and we'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. So for example, if we want to do string, let's say we're using a use case where we want our AI to give or collect the name of a user from whatever API platform that we're catching from. We'll have our example, we'll have Alex James as our example for the parameter. Now, because of how these work, each one will have a set name and what to collect from the conversation. So this will be name, and then we'll say what to collect, the name of the user, and then we can designate the type and the example. So in this case, we're collecting the name of the user as a string, and this is our example. We can do another one, for example, phone, we'll say phone of user, then we can designate phone number as our type, and we'll include an example just like that. Then we can test our webhook here, and once everything's done, we can save this action. Now, let me show you a really cool use case that I built for this using a public API. Here we have an AI agent named My Finance Agent, and the goal of this agent is to collect finance information from the internet and give it back to the user over the phone. So we set this up over agent goals. We entered a very simple prompt, and then under our call, we have our during call actions right here, gather finance data. This is an example of a completed custom action using Voice AI. The action name is gather finance data, and the specific case for this to happen is if the user wants to, let's say, convert a currency. So if I can call my AI and ask it to convert 100 USD to 100 euros, then that's when this will take place. And yes, it can read into those subtle conversation cues, so you don't have to say the exact same thing. That's one of the beauties of using AI with this. Then it'll say, let me check the market for you, one moment. We have an API endpoint URL, which you can find this anywhere on the internet. This is just where we are going to get that information from. We then have our headers. And in this case, this doesn't technically need any authentication, so we just add the API key as a header, which doesn't really matter. And then here are our parameters. So we have 4 different parameters set up for this action, which I would recommend setting up multiple parameters in order to give yourself multiple pieces of information from wherever you're using that API or posting information to. So for example, we are collecting the base currency code, so USD. Then we're collecting the target currency code, which is EUR for euros. Then we're collecting the amount to convert. This is our example of 1,000. And then we're going to collect the date for historical rates. So I can request a historical rate from, let's say, the 90s of what the conversion rate from USD to euros was. And just because I have those set up as my example doesn't mean that's the only code that it can do. With this setup, depending on your API and what information is included in your API, it'll use this example intelligently in order to find whatever one that your customer is actually requesting. I hope this has given some insight into how custom actions within Voice AI can work, because it's a lot of fun and it's really exciting to use. Be sure to mess around a little bit with the API requests, because that's usually where you're going to have some issues if you're trying to create something more complicated to get information or post information. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to look up more information about API requests, because it's kind of a whole world that you need to dive into. And if you have any questions, leave a comment, refer to the help doc, and thank you for watching.